Hey, Sean's here, and I just wanted to quickly talk about kind of the state of Shaman really quickly, and kind of talk about how we did this tier, look at this tier in review, and kind of the state of Shaman right now, and how our outlook looks going forward, and kind of predictions about 9.2 a little bit. So I just want to start off by saying that I haven't actually been like I'm not really like Petco or Bracco Shama or any of those like big name Shaman players, or even like Childrose, who just recently started making Shaman this tier, and he's like probably the best Shaman in the world, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm none of those guys. I just started playing Shaman last year during farm. When my guild fell apart, I decided I wanted to reroll from Mage. I'm a multi-classer and like Flavor of the Month player, although I did Mage for many years, from like Kata pretty much until now, and I've like played a bunch of different classes in between whenever like we needed it for prog. But I never really played Elemental Shaman. It was just never like an OP spec besides for a little bit in BFA. I believe like BOD was like insane and Crucible, and then started to fall off again back in EP. But yeah, I just figured it would be a nice little challenge to learn how to play it. It looked really fun, and it had been recently buffed in 9.0.5, so I felt like it was going to be like pretty strong. Especially moving on from Nathria, because of course in Nathria we didn't have the Wind Speaker's legendary for the first month. So thanks Blizzard for locking that behind a world boss. So without that, obviously Shaman was kind of like underrepresented rather. I feel like it was a little bit stronger than most people think it was that tier. And I feel like if it had started with the Wind Speaker's legendary, it definitely would have been brought on prog. Definitely at least one spot, and we were actually pretty decent on single target that tier. We unfortunately were like really good for SLG, but not great for Denathrius. So it was a really weird spot because we don't have great execute, and P3 Denathrius is unique in that it has a ton of forced downtime where we can't really generate Maelstrom, and we lose cast because we have very low CDs that need to be casted every single time on the CD. So just the way the blood prices and everything worked just kind of didn't work to our favor, and there were better classes in P1 and P2. So Shaman just wasn't great on Denathrius, but again, excellent on SLG. And of course we played Necro in that tier. So moving into this tier, into Sanctum, I kind of felt like we were actually going to be pretty strong. I didn't think that we were going to be like a stackable class or anything, but I definitely felt like we had a very strong chance of being in the world first race. And in a way, I was kind of right. I believe Big Dumb Guild did play one Ele Sham on progress, and of course Instant Dollars, who wasn't really in the world first race, but they did make some noise in the first week when they got Painsmith in the first week. They also ran Ele Shaman Childrose again, who is, in my opinion, the best Ele Shaman in the world. So in a way, I was kind of right. I do still think we're a solid class. I don't think we're like world first class, at least this tier, unless you got like insane gear the first week. Just because we really, really lack in single target, and especially that first week, single target was just so important above everything else. Now with a little bit more gear, if I were to like to make the perfect prog comp, assuming the level of gear we have now, definitely one Ele Shaman would be in it. Just what they bring just supplements a lot of other classes as well, especially the stronger specs like Boomkins. We kind of fill in the gaps in between their CDs, because obviously like, so there's like kind of a few main types of damage profiles in the game as far as like CDs go. You have like the 1 minutes, the 2 minutes, the 3 minutes, and of course the 4 minutes. And then in between that, there's like just like the period of time you deliver that damage over, right? Because like a Boomkin, for example, with Venthyr, obviously they do insane damage, right? But it's not like 3 minutes are up and then, they do like a million damage in like 2 seconds, right? No, they do like the 3 minutes come up, they start ramping like 15 seconds or 20 seconds into that, they call for PI. Then for like another 10 seconds, they start actually doing damage. And then the last like 15 seconds of their CDs is when they're doing that like ridiculous astronomical level of damage. So once that ends, if you ask any Boomkin player, I'm pretty sure they'll tell you the same thing. Outside of their CDs, they do like below the tank in terms of damage. So someone has to fill in the gap in between that, and obviously that can be covered by a variety of the different classes, but Shaman is just very good at doing very consistent damage. Like if you look at the peaks and troughs of a DPS graph, like you'll see like a bunch of different classes depending on their CDs. They'll go like really high for like 10 seconds or so, and then like for maybe a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, they do like below the tank even level damage. And so someone needs to keep doing damage obviously during that period of time. And especially if there's like a DPS requirement, like say in like a 2-3 minute window, someone has to keep doing damage during that time. Like so Shaman's very good at supplementing that amount, because obviously we don't really burst. We kind of stay around the same amount. We may like spike a little bit for Stormkeeper, but you know, we kind of float along at that like straight line. And then when it comes to AoE, it's more of our forte. We have like more of a like ground out niche. There we do very good burst damage on a 1 minute CD and very good consistent AoE damage if ads like just keep living and they're stacked up properly. But you know, that's just kind of like if you were to bring Shaman, that's what they would do, and that's what they're there for this tier. It's not really for the single target, so you have to bring other classes that do that. If you want burst single target CDs, you have to bring other classes like a mage or something. If you want more sustained single target damage, then you bring like a priest or a demolock. But that's just kind of like what you need a shaman for, and I definitely think we have a spot this tier if we were to make like a perfect comp, given the gear we have now. But as a whole, this tier, obviously we perform very well, especially with the rise of the new seed build. If you look at like the overall Warcraft Logs performance, we're pretty up there, even higher than the like classes that are stronger than us, like in functionality. So like we parse very well throughout the raid as a whole. But then when you actually look into the nitty gritty, as far as like the hard fights and what damage profiles actually really matter, as far as like what can, you know, when you look at like things like who's really good at domination chains, who's really good at killing ads and the P2 intermission, who's good at killing sentinels, and who's good at killing Sylvanas herself in P3, right? You see Shaman's really good at killing domination chains. You see they're really good at cleaving out sentinels. You see they're really good at doing a lot of damage in their intermission. And you see they're bad at Sylvanas. Well, okay, what really matters on that fight? Domination chains matter a lot. But a lot of classes can do enough damage to the chains at this point, especially with the nerf, that like when you think about it, elemental shaman, it's like, okay, they have everything for the chains every now and then, right? But the chains at this point get overkilled by so much. It's like, you know, you're never going to stack shamans on this fight, because like having too many would just, it's a waste. Having them Stormkeeper at some point on the chains, and then if you have them Stormkeeper on the boss, well, their single target damage is like dog shit compared to most classes. So it's like at that point, why bring like extra shamans or anything? But having like one shaman is like just one CD you always know is up for every chain. So if you have lower chain damage, like if you don't have a lot of boomkins, especially on the intermission, they're very good for fulfilling that role. You look at P2 intermission damage. You'll see shamans do pretty like solid damage in the intermission, like they'll be pretty high up there. But then when you actually investigate, right, well, they'll do nothing to Sylvanas on the burn, pretty much like the little mini burns. Like I really don't do that much, especially if I was to run like the Earthquake Legendary. And then when it comes to the actual ad platforms, as far as priority target damage, like to the ad on that platform that actually matters, like the Soul Judge or the Summoner, you're not really going to see shamans like top that damage. It's going to be the arcane mages or the fire mages or the rep pallies or arms warriors or whatever, right? They're going to be the ones actually like shitting on those ads. We just kind of hit everything else and look pretty on the meters. And then of course, when we move on lastly to P3 of Sylvanas, of course, then you're going to see we really don't bring anything worth writing home about to that boss. So, and then we look at Painsmith right at this point in the tier. Obviously, like I would say that's definitely a fight where we have more of a place, because we do target switching like on that fight. Like pretty much the best in the game outside of like an MM Hunter are the only ones I would say that like kind of matches, or maybe an arcane mage that gets like really lucky on every barrage. But when it comes to Shadow Steel Horrors and nuking those, again, at this point in the tier, like the year creep alone will cover those ads. Like anyone that has CDs will be enough to kill them. I mean, even one Necrolord monk that gets Chaos Being proc right then, even though they run like Bloodlink, I think, Like if they were to run Chaos Bane or something on that fight, I mean, just one Necrolord and Monk would clap those ads like to oblivion, and maybe like an Arms Warrior hitting them too, and with an Arcane Mage. So the damage on the Shadowsteel Horrors matters, right? But only to a certain extent, to the point where you look and you see, okay, we have more than enough to kill these in time. We now just want classes that can do a lot of boss damage and a lot of damage to the spike balls, which luckily we happen to fulfill both those, or not both those rules, but we do the spike ball damage, so it doesn't really matter that we're overkilling the horrors. But yeah, that's just this tier in review. So let's move on to kind of the last point I wanted to discuss, which is the viability of Shaman, like in a vacuum, as things stand right now, and kind of how things look moving forward in 9.2 and next year. Like, you may be wondering, will we be viable, will we be good even, or strong or OP? So the answer to that is actually very simple, but it starts with a caveat. Obviously, we have no information right now at all on 9.2. We don't know what the rate's going to be. We don't know how many bosses are in it. We don't know the damage profiles of it. We don't know if there's going to be tier sets. We don't know in 9.2 if we're going to equip 2 legendaries, which is a whole other different beast. We don't know if there's going to be new soulbind traits. We don't know if they're going to rebalance old traits. We don't know if they're going to add conduits. We don't know if they're going to retune these conduits, because they have been tuning some conduits, but not all of them. We don't know if they're going to add anything new with Covenant abilities. We don't know if they're going to add a whole new soulbind for each Covenant. As you can see, there's just a lot of unknowns. So I can't really say anything for certain, obviously, but you can assume if everything remained as it is right now, they don't do any major tuning, there's no new systems, no addition to the existing systems, then okay, let's look at what Shaman does good. Shaman right now is target switching good, does burst AoE good within certain time periods and CD requirements, right? So if the important fights are fights where the boss HP doesn't really matter, it'll just kind of die, which is rare, but it can happen. If that's the case, and the hard fights are fights where boss damage really doesn't matter and you meet it enough. You can look at like a fight like KT, obviously, where that's a fight where boss HP, like, it just doesn't matter. You can meet the checks easily, and you need other forms of damage, right? If there's, or like even SLG. SLG is a fight where, like in P3, you'll meet the DPS check. There's no DPS check to speak of there. So it's really just the fight is about controlling ads and killing them within certain specific windows, and that's a fight like we excelled at, right? So if there's hard fights like SLG, there's hard fights like Painsmith where target switching is important. If there's hard fights like Sylvanas, where there's certain ads that need to die very quickly, that just line up naturally with our CDs, and there's no P3 burn like Sylvanas, where the most important damage is just meeting that check, then you can expect LA to have a near guaranteed spot. And then we have to also speak about our utility, right? We're a pretty tanky class. We're not the tankiest. I'd say we're about like a little bit worse than a Boomkin survivability. And Boomkins, of course, are worse than a Fire Mage, which are about as equal as a Priest. And then Locks are like somewhere in the mix of that. And then Hunters are all at the bottom. That's just kind of the way the classes survivability are ranked. And then you look at our utility, right? Look at things like our off healing, which isn't great compared to something like a Boomkin that has Heart of the Wild and can actually like do very competitive HPS in a short period of time. Then you have to look at things like movement. This tier movement was very, very like movement CDs were very necessary and required. So Windrush was exceptionally powerful, and that kind of helped give us a spot. It's also kind of why Enhance kind of got a spot, because of how powerful Windrush was, combined with melee being strong, combined with Windfury giving melee a lot of damage. So when you consider things like that, if there's fights that require Windrush, kind of like this tier, then okay, we have even a higher chance of being brought. So the question really becomes, will there be fights where movement's important in a very small set of window, where the whole raid needs to move as one to get out of something, dodge something, or make it to something? Okay, so Windrush will be good here. So you have to think about bringing a Shaman or at least a Boomkin. That's also the other thing. Boomkin has insane utility. So this video is kind of an advertisement to bring more Boomkins to the raid, but when you consider that, And then you consider the fact that if the raids kind of lean towards the damage profiles that Ele is good at, if it's not a very single target focused tier, then okay, yeah, it looks like Ele has a spot. Again, I don't think even if Ele's strengths are played to in the next raid, I don't think you would ever stack elemental shamans, because at the point that you're considering stacking them, you just might not even bring them at all. It's kind of like the weird little caveat there. But yeah, I do think that we're in a pretty good place. I think really to be consistently broad and be consistently viable, we would need like either some slight reworks, or we would just need a flat buff to our single target damage. I think not even a 5% aura buff, but like a 5% buff to our single target spells would be enough to where, okay, yeah, I think we bring shamans tier. That's definitely kind of what they need. You can look at like having DH is kind of an example. They got like that 5-8% buff to their single target spells, and like suddenly this tier they were just insane. And if we get something like that, I think we're definitely just guarantee a spot. If they do an aura buff, we probably go to OP status, not even gonna lie. An 8% buff to our cleave, as it stands, would just kind of be crazy in terms of as well as buffing our single target. So hopefully they don't do that, because if that happens, we're just gonna get nerfed, probably to worse than we are now. But if they do a 5% to our single target, I think we'll be in a really, really solid spot, and pretty much just guaranteed a raid spot for the foreseeable future. But again, like I mentioned before, 9.2 could bring a whole bunch of other things, especially with Blizzard really needing to impress, considering WoW is kind of on the downturn right now. So there may be double legendaries, maybe whole new soulbinds, tuning to existing soulbinds, new conduits, maybe even new conduit or new covenant abilities if they really break the mold. And then there is the rumored actual tier sets that we're supposed to be getting, as they originally mentioned we were, and then we got shards, of course. So again, we can't really foresee where things are going. We don't really know what they're going to do. But with all that being said, I do think Shaman's like on that borderline spot of nearly guaranteeing a raid spot, but it's definitely like it's a very thin margin. Very easily could just not even be considered, or we could just be guaranteed a spot on every fight. But that's all I got for today. Just wanted to talk about that, because it's just something I've been thinking about a lot recently. Again, you can catch me on Twitch. I usually stream my Reclear every Tuesday through Thursday, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. EST. And you can ask me questions there, or just come hang out, watch the stream, just see how I do all the fights. And hopefully it's a good time. I do stream other games with my friends, so you can also watch that as well. And then, of course, like, comment, subscribe. See you around. Peace.